Okay.
Hello, Pearl. We gave out all the answers.
Sorry, folks. I'm recording a little bit late. I forgot to hit the record button. So what we're doing today is talking about language that we use in informal colloquial situations, colloquial being the academic term for slang or conversational talk, the formal language that we use with professionals, and then we will get to the academic language that we use, particularly in our writing or towards writing assignments, or when we're trying to communicate within a specific field or specific subject, the words and terms that we use. So talk about these abbreviations or slang terms that we use, but also swear words, very informal, very colloquial, but sometimes that's starting to transfer and ends up transferring and using that in a formal situation or with other professionals or adults, but that introduces that idea of what becomes inappropriate, right? And by definition, something becomes inappropriate if we're breaking a norm, a social norm. And it is socially unacceptable to use certain words or certain phrases around certain people. It depends on the context and it depends on the culture, right? So good examples for formal. Any other examples of formal that you guys want to throw out? I like these.
Do you need some assistance?
Okay, I think that's very similar to what we have.
Like, excuse me.
Excuse me, good.
Being polite.
Mm-hmm.
I would say a major part like this too is like body language, because for each one, there's different body language for each one.
Now that's a whole different category, Greg, and I think that's a really important point, is body language. We're actually today focusing just on verbal language, diction, word choice, but that is a whole other field, a very, very important one. What our body language says about us and about other people, that is very important. But that doesn't necessarily apply to what we're talking about today. I'm really glad you brought that up, though.
Would how are you, would that be counted for or no?
It could. I think so. How about like other things that you would say, not necessarily just greetings, but are there any other ways in which that you find yourself talking to professionals?
How's your day going?
So small talk, such as, how was your day? What do you think of the weather, right?
About them Broncos.
There you go. Yep. Believe it or not, that is actually another form of formal etiquette, right? The small talk that we can make. And I think that's the hard part about small talk, is that it is talk, coming up with words and phrases to talk about those things. And then even how we talk about those things. I mean, if you did watch the Bronco game, how you talk about that Bronco game with your friends versus with someone at a job interview or someone at a new, if you're working at a new place and you don't know everybody very well, that can also be very different, right? How about academic? Words that you use when you're writing.
You use like a lot of you use periods and like quotations. If you're like saying for example, for instance, for our Englishes, you use the quotations. You write full sentences sometimes.
So full sentences, meaning that you'll use complete thoughts.
Like I say, very detailing in what you're writing. Like be like creative and descriptive at the same time.
Okay, maybe use more description. I'm not sure who was talking about full sentences. Who said that?
Ryan.
It was Rand. Yeah. What I like about that is that I completely agree with that. I think in speech, we tend to use more fragments. We shorten our sentences because we can. Because as Greg pointed out, we have body language. We have, those nonverbals on our face and limbs and things like that help fill in those details. And you also have the context of what other people around you are saying, that dialogue, so that we don't always have to use complete thoughts when we're speaking to each other in person. But in writing, you need that. And that's a big change as well. And something that comes with more practice with writing. I totally agree with that. Any others?
We tend to pay more attention to our grammar.
Yep.
Also, like spelling. We do a lot of like trying to spell things correctly, so it doesn't look so like kind of dumb.
I would totally agree with that.
You use different words to try to convey the feelings more.
Yep, Greg, that's exactly where I want to go. What are some of those words? What are some of those phrases?
Like you wouldn't use like normal words. Like you would use higher level words like excited, exasperated, stuff like that. Courageous,
Ashamed,
yeah.
outraged.
I was thinking we would use, when you use that term sincerely, right? When we're
Yeah.
signing off from something, we don't talk like that. We don't say that to other people, but we tend to do that when we're writing, right? Same with to whom it may concern.
Right? You don't just go up to somebody and just go make it.
You don't walk into an office building and, when you're looking for someone for that job interview, to whom it may concern. Where am I
Like
going?
the same
Right?
poetry.
You don't say that. That's not what you do, right? But we do in writing very frequently. I also see the words I believe, that phrase I believe. A lot of times in speech we'll say I think, but I tend to see more believe statements in writing. I think my own impressions, I think believe feels more formal. It feels more mature than just saying I think. And so that's how students tend to write. But yeah, I don't hear people say I believe very frequently in speech, but I see it a lot more in writing.
I believe that I can fly.
Any others?
Yes, actually, there could be also like when you're writing a letter, you say dear and then da da da. So like dear or to, like that kind of stuff.
I want you to think about your math and your science courses as well, or including art, or even your PE courses. Are there any terms that you tend to use more often, or formatting you tend to use more often in those arenas than you do?
I don't know. I just talked to him. He didn't really say anything. He just said he's not going to jail. That's all he said.
Good to know. Hey,
I don't know. He said.
do me
I
a
don't
favor,
know.
guys. Everybody mute your
I'm still
computer.
waiting for him to respond.
Everybody mute your computer. Did everybody mute their computer? No, everybody did not mute their computer. Hold on, I'm gonna stop sharing really quick. Hey, Ariana?
Yes.
Honey, can you mute your computer, sweetheart, or your phone? Thank you. Awesome. Ooh, someone chatted saying however instead of but. Leela, thank you. That's huge. Now, I'm sorry I'm seeing this so late. Is that something you wanted to put under writing, like academic language? Awesome. I completely agree with you. We tend to use that contrasting language so much more. That's an awesome example. Or saying yes instead of yeah. I would agree. I think yeah has even moved over to formal language, even though it does sound very informal. I think no matter who you're talking to, we tend to say yeah, okay, yeah, you're right, something along those lines. And same with therefore. I'm really grateful you brought that up, Leela. Those conjunctive adverbs, however, therefore, nonetheless, we use those in writing very frequently. They make us sound much more mature. It's much more professional. I like that. We can't punctuate and indent our words when we speak to others, but it's pretty important in writing. Nadia, you're right. And actually, punctuation is our sort of our nonverbals in writing, because we're able to make pauses in speech and we're able to use facial expressions for to emphasize certain things, and we want to be able to do that in writing, and that's why we have punctuation. And so that's why at the high school level, at the secondary level, that's why we put so much energy into focusing on punctuation, because that's that next step. The difference between a 6th or 7th grade writer to a senior in high school is the complexity of the sentences, right? So your complex sentences, not just simple sentences or even compound sentences, as well as the punctuation. Makes a big difference.
Hallelujah.
Yeah.
I'm really glad you brought that up, Nadia. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Also, as academic writing goes,
They can't
the way we write,
Say that again, Tiki.
Just because of what academic writing is, and it's the way that we write on paper to others or just for other people to read. A big one that I would notice would be once upon a time, because it's the way we start stories. It's the way we tell stories to others through writing.
I would agree with
That's a
that.
good one.
And it's more narrative as opposed to argumentative, but it's still very legit because we tell stories all the time to our friends, constantly. Like, oh my God, you have no idea what happened when I went to Starbucks today, right? Something along those lines, right? We're always starting. We're always starting a lot of conversations with the details first, and then you get to the punchline, then you get to what's interesting. But that does change once you start writing out what you're trying to say.
Yeah, and you also try to keep your sentences short but interesting at the same time, so people won't get bored and just like wander off. So people will stay interested as well. So they ain't reading like a book; they're just reading something you did today. Not like you don't need to give like every detail.
We keep our thoughts shorter. I would agree with that. And that's why, I mean, I think it was Stefan, like had said, maybe we use more descriptions. I would agree with you. I think that's something that you're called upon to do by your teachers. However, I've noticed that when we're talking, we tend to share a lot more than we do when we're writing. And for some reason, I don't know how many of you suffer almost from writer's block. Like, if you could just say what you wanted to say, it would be so much easier. But once you have to actually write it down on a computer or on paper, you freeze up. All of a sudden you don't know what to say. You don't know how to say it. You don't know how to get it out, right? And so in a lot of ways we end up condensing what it is that we're trying to say. Sometimes even due to a lack of time and the amount of effort. It is a lot harder to put our thoughts into formal academic language because then you are thinking of the structures. You are thinking of the punctuation. You're thinking of all those things, which is an extra step or two. I think that's a really good point, Greg. I like that a lot. Okay, I'm going to move on. Now this is what I wanted. I think this is really important, but if you haven't read the poem, we're not going to be able to do anything with that. So the thing that I want you to keep in mind, it's not a poem. I don't know why I said poem. It's an essay. I'm going to change that. And actually, it started out as a speech, but it ended up becoming more of an essay because it was so popular. Amy Tan talks about, I don't know if you know who Amy Tan is. She wrote Joy Luck Club. That was probably one of her more famous pieces that ended up being made into a movie, I want to say in like the 90s or early 2000s. She grew up as a Chinese American. Her parents were born in China, so she grew up bilingual. And that experience taught her a lot about language, not just how to talk, but socially, what happens if English is your second language, or if English is your first language but it isn't for your parents, and what that looks like for yourself as well as in society. So really interesting essay, I thought, and hopefully you enjoy it as well. And so there are some questions that you're answering with that essay, but I did want to talk about that because that directly ties into the essay that you're going to be writing. But I think we can move on to the essay part without actually going back to Tan's essay. One thing, what I think would be a very good use of your time right now, depending on where you're at and what you're doing, if you were able to take notes right now, I think that would be very beneficial for you. If you're on a computer, you can open up Google Docs, you can open up Notepad. If you just have a piece of paper and a writing utensil, go for it. But what I want you to start brainstorming is what your languages say about your own identity and your personality, depending on what you use. When we were brainstorming some of that informal language that we use, it's a very short list because truthfully, there's probably slang terms you use in your family or in your community or with your friends that maybe somebody else doesn't. And that depends on a lot, right? So like I said, like for me, it's dude. And my friends use the term dude often as well, right? I mean, that's just a part of my circle. I don't hear too many of you guys using the word dude. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. I'm not sure. I don't hear it very often, but I hear other things, right? Like Rayan, you were saying you hear the phrase yo, right? Maybe for some of you, you don't. But what's more important is what you hear and what you use within your own group. So I want you to take a second to brainstorm that. Try to think of maybe 3 or 4 terms for your informal as well as formal language. And then I will ask you to share out here briefly if you want, if you're willing.
Can you repeat the last 3 sentences real quick?
I want you to brainstorm what slang language you use, not just what's out there, but what do you use? What are some informal terms that you use?
What if we already know, like,
You got it? Yeah, then you're good.
yes.
Then you're good. Why I recommend you write it down is because this is what you're writing your essay about. So the brainstorming that you're doing right now is your evidence. You're brainstorming evidence for your essay. So hopefully you can see, since I've shared my screen, you can see what I have for you are some prompting questions for your essay. First, what do your languages reveal about your identity and personality? Well, truthfully, before we even get to our claim, we got to think about our evidence first. What are we working with? What are some of those slang terms? So do me a favor, what are some of those slang terms that you're wanting to use in your essay as evidence?
Mother of pearl.
Mother of pearl.
Yep, that's our language.
Got it.
So there could be, what up, homie?
Bro.
Brah,
Dude.
Bro.
home skillet.
Okay, you're done.
Yeah, I think, yeah, we got it.
Let's
But
chill.
I know a lot of people who use that word bro or brother.
Or hiddle?
Broski.
Hiddle?
Okay, Stefan, thank you. Anybody else?
I got none.
Scrub.
Thank you. Now here's the kicker, right? It's not just about the words that you use, but what do these terms say about your identity or your personality? Like, Stefan, I'm going to call on you. When you say mother of pearl, are you using that as like an exclamatory, like an exclamation of something when something dramatic happens or you're upset?
Yeah. I just use it like all the time. Like if something occurs, then I'm just like right away to say, like, because I have nothing else that comes to my mind. So I'm just like, mother of pearl, dude. Like, why?
Well, what I infer when I hear that, that to me sounds like a substitution for a different phrase that some people could find offensive.
From yesterday, yes.
Honestly, I got nothing to connect with it. That's what I say all the time.
Okay, so maybe you say because it is random, because it comes directly from your mind, raw, with no filter.
Yep.
Okay.
It's
What do you think
Yes,
that says
multiple
about
uses.
your,
say
what?
it's the same reason it's become a thing to say peace off instead of, the alternative of.
No. Like what the French toast, that's what I say. I say, what the French toast?
See, no, that's just it. Okay,
That's my syrup.
What the French toast.
Yeah, I say that a lot.
good.
Where's my syrup?
That's
Okay,
what my
stay
friends
with
used
me,
to do.
guys, stay with me, because here's the thing. The next question is, so Stefan, we were talking about yours, but I think even Tiki, as you brought up, like peace off and what the French toast, like the fact that you're coming up with those phrases, what does that say about your personality? Or necessarily about how you see yourself?
Like to me, like it explains me because like I'm not really derogatory. Like I'll just say anything that comes to my mind that's so random, such as mother of pearl. Like I use that all the time. That's the first word that comes to my head. There's no other words but that. Like that explains that I'm not so like independent to express who I am, honestly.
So rather than being just flat out offensive, being more
It's comical,
almost
basically.
socially friendly.
Yeah, comical. Like you're trying to be a comedian at the same time. It's
Yeah.
being
Yeah.
a total jerk.
Exactly.
Peace off.
Oh,
Right.
another good one that I use is snitzel stick.
What the what?
What the French toast? That's a good time to use
Snitzel
that.
sticks, yeah.
Guys, I'm going to go back to what Stefan and Tiki had pointed out, because this is how you can start formulating your claim. So I took those examples, but by answering that question, okay, so what does that say about your identity or personality? That's where I got the sentence. Using informal phrases like mother of pearl or peace off shows that I do not want, I should put to be, I do not want to be derogatory as well as comical. I do not want to be derogatory, but instead be comical. Okay?
I like it.
That's what I'm looking for your essay.
I love mother of pearl. It's my
So
catchphrase.
notice, like if we were start using a sentence starter, sentence frame, right? It's what type of English are you using? This would be informal. What words or phrases are you using? Here we have mother of pearl or peace off. I don't know if that should be capitalized. Shows that, right? And that's when you fill in that part about your identity or how you want to be seen. There's a lot of options here, okay? But this is what I need to see for your claim, for your thesis, okay? For your paper. So then describe that language, right? Here we've got some of those examples, but when you're giving your evidence, you need to think about a specific time you used that word or phrase. And in this case, you want to show conversation. You want to show dialogue. What did the people around you say? What happened that prompted you to use that word? And how did people respond? Did they understand what you were saying or not? Because there are some students or some people, I don't have these students, some adults, they tend to use some of their own personal words or phrases in a very foreign or different context. So then people just stop and look totally confused. But some people like that shock value, right? That says something about their identity. So do you like using those phrases and words around people who understand, who use those words as well? Or would you prefer being around people who don't? Or does it matter? And if not, why, right? So that's something else to talk about. So then your analysis down here. So here's your evidence. And here's going to be your analysis. This is what's going to come after you give your evidence. How does that language show your identity and your personality? So how does using the phrase mother of pearl or peace off show that you don't want to be derogatory? And how does that show that you want to be comical?
Like for mine with mother of pearl, like I mostly use it like in a question because I don't really say it like just out loud. I most likely say it to where it's in a question, like someone is being so negative to me. I'm like, dude, mother of pearl, dude, like why? Why would you do that to me?
So using this phrase during a confrontation?
Yeah.
Good job, Stefan. I like that.
So using this phrase during a confrontation, and so why? Why would you use that phrase during a confrontation? What do you want to get out of it? What do you hope it will do?
It would calm the situation down.
Mother of pearl.
I was gonna say
Rather than, like, if there's a hostile situation, just, for example, between me and Alejandro here, that it would just go, he'd say mother of pearl for me if I was getting up in his face, or for just a random reason, and it would be a way to calm the situation down and not have such a agitated view from both sides.
Yeah, like not
Yeah, I agree
so
with that.
aggressive. Like just, I'm trying to figure out like why are you so negative?
yeah,
Like I haven't done anything wrong. So like, mother of pearl, what's up?
Okay.
it takes
good.
away energy is what it's like, taking away bad energy and replacing it with like calm and funny energy, trying to
Good.
take away.
So what I have here is using this phrase during a confrontation will diffuse the tension and hopefully end the conflict. That's awesome. Now connect that back to being comical, or connect that back, because now, right, you've got to connect back to your claim. That's what your analysis does. It explains how that evidence proves your point. So how does this prove that you
Like it-
want to be seen as comical or not as derogatory?
Like since I use it as a question, like I don't really want to like be so negative about it. Like I may come up shocked, but I don't want to like make like this conflict so big. Like I just want to use it like, okay, I'm saying this as a point. Like I'm not disrespectful, so please don't be so negative to me. That's what I say mother of pearl as. Like it's not a negative word. Like it's not to a point where you get mad because you don't understand what I'm saying. Like mother of pearl, not many people know what I'm saying. Like, what do you mean by that? That's a question. That's the question. What do you mean by what do I mean by that? Because I haven't said it negative, so it's got you questioning a lot of things in your mind.
So you want people questioning things?
Yeah, I want them to question like mother of pearl, like because they know that I'm not saying it in a negative way, so they understand it's not negative. But what do you mean by that?
So connect that back to not being derogatory or being comical. How does that relate? Because that's the personality trait that you're identifying with.
Hey, can you come back to me? I'm gonna have to think more on it.
Well, that's okay. Anybody else have an idea? How does using that phrase connect back to the idea of not being derogatory or avoiding conflict or even being comical?
It's not something you would normally expect from in a conversation, especially if the conversation is going a certain way and you're trying to be comical and whatnot. I'm going to use mine in this case.
Mhm.
If each party is a little bit agitated and you just want to calm it down a bit and you're kind of in a joking mood, you can be like, "Yo, peace off, y'alls."
Mhm.
It just calms it down a little bit, or at least that's from my experience.
Okay, so it shows that you don't like conflict or negativity, and that you would rather see people laughing
Yeah.
Yeah.
than fighting. Okay.
It brings
Wait.
negative energy down and rises good energy.
Good.
Like it takes you're trying to build up a different type of energy to go a different way, so that you will avoid a fight. And maybe you guys can make a good day out of it because of something.
Good. So maybe creating a positive environment instead of a negative one. Good.
I like
And those are all traits. And instead of saying like, I don't want to be seen as derogatory, you could say, I do, I don't want to offend people. Instead, I want to inspire them. I'd like to see people peaceful and happy and getting along and not fighting and not getting down on each other, right? You have a lot of options there. But this whole process that we went through, that's what I want to see in your essay. Okay. So we just went through, theoretically, as a class, we've got different descriptions that you can use, right? Talking about informal phrases. That can even go back to using yes, sir, or yes, ma'am, no, sir. You don't have to just use informal. You can also use formal, right? I use these formal phrases because I want to be seen as this, right? Or this shows this part of my personality. If you wanted, you could talk about your academic English as opposed to your informal. But I would say just pick two of those three that we looked at together, informal, formal, and academic. Just pick two of these, okay? Because you're going to need to have two body paragraphs. One paragraph is going to focus on one type of language. The other body paragraph is going to focus on a second type of language. And that's up to you. But where that deep thinking, the critical thinking comes into play is what does that language say about you, okay? That's the critical thinking part, where that descriptive part, your use of language, comes in for your evidence. How well can you describe it? How well can you recreate what that scenario or what that scene looks like? That's what's going to separate weak evidence from strong evidence.
Okay, and also, what if we have like a lot? Do we just choose like a couple?
Yeah.
Because
Just pick two.
okay, because I have like a whole bunch.
Just limit yourself to two examples for each type of English. What I attached to the assignment today is an essay outline, because when you did your essay through Think Circa, it kind of gave you an outline. This isn't through Think Circa, this is something different, so I created an outline for you, okay? So this is going to show you every paragraph that you're going to need. You're going to need an introduction. You're going to need a body number 1, and that's going to talk about a type of English, right? Identify a type of English. So this could be informal or formal. You have to give evidence describing a time you use that language, and then you got to share your reasoning. Now notice that there's two pieces of evidence here, evidence number 1 and evidence number 2, but I put if you can for evidence number 2. So if you're in Rand's situation where you can think of a lot of different terms that you use, you could probably have 2 pieces of evidence within that first body paragraph. But if you can only think of 1, that's okay, but you got to have at least 1 piece of evidence. Then body number 2, identify a second type of English that you use, okay? And that's what your second body paragraph is going to focus on. Again, claim, evidence, and reasoning. That is the backbone. That's of any sort of argumentative or persuasive essay. You got to have claim, evidence, and reasoning. And then use 2 pieces of evidence if you can, and then write a conclusion paragraph. And I've given descriptions for each one so that you can see what needs to go in there. Any questions about the assignment so far?
Can we be awesome in this assignment? I mean, come on.
Stefan, you can be awesome every day of the week, man.
Yes!
Any
awesome.
other questions about that?
I think you gave them power you do not need.
With it, could we also like could we make it like all colorful in our essay for like the different sections?
Colorful, as in you're using like different highlighting colors?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I say, because this is academic writing, I am going to dissuade you from doing that. That takes away from your professionalism. However, I do look forward to colorful language. That can mean lots of things.
We can cuss. I know.
I can do that. No, Stefan, you cannot cuss. Are you stupid? No
Hey,
offense.
if I will
No
say
offense.
this, I will say this, because if swear words are a very, very common part of what you say, depending on how often you do it, you can use it, but you got to analyze that. You got to explain to me why you choose to use that swear word, that cuss word as often as you do, and what that says about you and how people perceive you because of it. Swear words are a very common part of our culture, and it's becoming more so. I mean, I'm hearing some of the words I'm hearing on TV at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm like, whoa, what? That was on TV? It's like not even after 9 o'clock. There's little kids running around, right? But there's more of a cultural acceptance of that now than there was before.
So, a quick question.
Yes.
Because you bring this up in
Mhm.
colorful words. Taboo words that were considered taboo by some people, but not by all. For example, like retarded.
Mhm. Mhm.
Are those what we're talking about as well?
Politically correct words. Yeah, if there are terms that you use that you recognize are not politically correct, but you choose to use them anyway, sure, go for it. But again, it's the analysis. You have to be able to explain what that says about you and why you do it, that you do it intentionally. There's a reason why you do it and what that reason is. Yep. These are good questions.
I'm gonna love this essay.
I'm looking forward to it. Oh, I'm sorry. I
This
missed
is
it.
gonna be awesome.
We can't. Savage. Jacob, I missed it. What do you mean by savage? I'm so sorry. Tell me more about that. It was a slang word. Yeah, cool. Yeah, and it's especially totally. So within your group, right? What does savage mean? I think that I'm so glad you brought that up, because again, especially for informal language, depending on how you use it, that word changes meaning. The connotation is very important. So if you are going to use a slang term that you know is very particular to your group of friends, that maybe not a lot of other people would understand, or they might misinterpret what that word means, you do have to define it. So explain what that slang term means to you and what that means within your group, and then what that says about you and why you use it. That's awesome. That's a great example, Jacob. I'm really glad you said that.
Also, words that are not exactly acronyms, but words that are old language. I'm just thinking because a word that I've used on multiple occasions is nth, which is a reference to old tree.
Mm.
Lord of the Rings.
Mhm.
Oh,
The giant trees were ents.
Mhm.
It came from an old reference from, I believe, like the 1920s or before that. I'm not exactly sure. Referencing those as well.
No, bring it up. Totally. Again, this is your time to analyze your language, to analyze what you use, why you use it, and what that says about you.
All right.
Yep. Nope. That's awesome. Good questions. Any others?
I love everybody here, basically.
That's awesome, Stefan. Thank you.
It is.
I love you too.
I feel the love.
I
feel
love
the
everybody.
I love you all, man. I want to miss you all.
Love
I want to cry.
sitting here just stuck in my chair because I can't move because of the love.
That's awesome. So on that note, I don't want to waste anybody's time. If you have questions about anything, assignments, grade book, what's coming up this week, things we're doing next week, whatever, please stick around. We'll address those questions. And for the rest of you, you're welcome to go. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Love you
you.
guys all. Bye.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Jellyfish.
How do I get out?
Bigger job.